Hey everybody, and welcome to another Park for May. This time it is very special because this time we have none other than team principal of the Heart of Racing and my boss now, but a very good old friend, Ian James. So, welcome Ian.
Yeah.
I got a little present for you.
Oh,
There you go.
thank you.
Well known
A little
as
product
the,
placement. Yeah.
well known as the way to bribe Ian James is with a double decker, just so you know.
The easy way to get up in the organisation.
It is. We're going to talk about his driver management stuff later on,
Yeah.
and that's definitely the first step, right, Ian?
It's a key element to it, really. Building block.
All right, well, welcome. Thanks for being on.
Thank you.
As we know, we've been friends for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And, a couple of years we've been involved in this project that you brought me into, so thank you.
No, I think I remember talking about the start of it, and it was just talk at that point, but it's crazy to see where we are now, you know.
It is. At the end of year 2,
Right.
I was just thinking about what's going to happen next year, and that would be year 3. So,
Wow.
yeah, pretty crazy. Seems like we just started, really.
Hope so.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
obviously a lot of things have happened to make that feel more like that. So.
It has, yeah.
But rather than talk about just the here and now, these things are more about people understanding who everyone is on the team with the drivers, etc. And the enigma, which is Ian James, which most people can't figure out, which is just the way you like it, I think.
Exactly. Got a little bit of a chic of secrecy behind what is happening there in that brain, right?
Yeah. And I remember Lee Diffie, earlier in your career, the young Ian James. Now you're not the elder statesman, but the refined and
I like to call it veteran.
veteran.
Yeah, veteran.
Not just in the driver's seat, but obviously on the management side and running teams and driver management and all that kind of stuff. So you're very busy, I know. But let's look all the way back to where it all began. Where did your passion for racing begin?
Well, my passion was born out of my dad racing, to be honest. I think I was at a racetrack, within months of my birth, and I've just been around it all my life, So some people, they just take to it, and it just feels like that's the norm. And I'm, very thankful that I was exposed to that at a young age, because it's just driven a streak in me that, thankfully I haven't ever lost, a passion for it.
Right. So what first drew, obviously your dad, he raced up to Formula 3, and so you were just watching from the stands and getting involved. How soon did you have to grab up a spanner and start helping?
Well, he had quite a bad accident, and then so he had to retire after that. But then when I was around 10 or 11, he decided to go back and do some historic racing, and so we would prep the car in the garage and all that, and that's when I really started to understand the mechanical intricacies of the race car, and soon I was the wrench on that and running those cars, and gradually, as I started racing, we built that up to a bigger program and ran other people's cars, a way to pay for me to go racing. And so it's that was definitely the building block, though.
So what were the first vehicles you drove? Was karting? Age what?
Karting, I think I was probably 6 or 7 years old when I was in my first kart on a racetrack. That is, I had a go-kart when I was really 3 or 4, but that was just on dirt and around the garden and stuff like that.
Right.
And then the first real race car I drove was actually his historic Formula 3 car. So.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and that was like a week after my 17th birthday when I got my driver's license. Yeah.
So obviously your dad knew all about racing. So what was his feelings when you decided I wanted to go, or was it just kind of an organic thing that just kind of evolved?
No, I think like initially when we started doing some go-karting, he could see the time and the effort I put into it, and how passionate I was about it.
Yeah.
And even when he wasn't racing, we were, he was involved in other teams, and friends that he used to race with. And I look back on people I've raced with, and now, more senior roles in the sport and those connections. But people like Tom Walkinshaw and all that, the people he raced with, I had immediate access to them, and they were in Formula 1 at the time, and so it was like a big deal for me.
Yeah.
And he helped a couple of drivers, as well. So I saw that side of it. So I think he just saw how passionate I was about it, and he could see that maybe I had some mechanical idea of what I was doing, and then we did okay when we went driving.
So you did karting, and then you actually got your road racing Formula Fords?
Vauxhall Junior.
Vauxhall Junior.
Yeah.
And who were you racing against at that moment in time?
People like Peter Dunbrek and Darren Manning, and that was in the Ralph Furman. Yeah, that was it back in that era.
Oh, obviously your dad had an engineering background, and you learned not just about racing, but you learned the engineering side. And I think that's been a very strong point for you. Did you know that engineering background, did you lean on that a lot to kind of get you in places that maybe money couldn't have even bought you?
You know, well, first of all, what I did 25 years ago is probably not feasible to do in this era. But back then, if you could go to a team and then they knew you were, you know, you understood what was going on with the car, you could give really good input, you could do coaching to your co-driver, that was worth a lot. That was worth much more than somebody else coming that had no more idea of what was going on except driving around in circles. Right. So really that's how, you know, I had my niche where I could do multi things on the team and contribute. And that's why, you know, I was lucky enough people wanted to keep me around and drive, you know. So
yeah. And how have you nurtured that engineering side of things? Because obviously once you're driving, it's not like you're going to be going to college for the next 5 years to do it.
Yeah, no, so I've always followed, you know, how race cars have progressed and the technology, and, you know, it's real hands-on learning, but I always try and follow the current, you know, technology, where it's at, what's behind it. Obviously there's a lot more people that are a lot more knowledge and a lot cleverer than I, but I try and take, you know, a little bit from everybody, and I can get a good sight picture and an overview, and now in my role that's helped me a lot, because I can really get to point A to B a lot faster than being, you know, lost on that direction.
What would you say were pivotal parts of your driving career, the different levels? You know, I know you went as far as racing in India, you know, all kinds of crazy places, just kind of trying to find a place to drive. What were the pivotal parts of what you achieved, or the next step that kept you on that role and eventually into sports cars, I guess?
Yeah, you know, so I would just basically drive anything, you know. I was going to, it doesn't matter if it was crap or if it was good, I would drive it, you know. So yeah. I think, you know, a couple of real pivotal moments for me was, you know, I did well in Vauxhall Junior on a really low budget, so people, you know, in the British scene started to notice that. And then, you know, I did some races for Ron Toranek, who was famous for Brabham, and then his own, you know, and then Rontor after that, you know. And actually that's where I learned a lot of the, you know, feedback and driver technical side of it. Yeah. Because he was a brilliant engineer, and we did a very small program, but it took a car that was really unsuccessful to a very successful car. But really it wasn't until, you know, I was always scratching to get the budget together to do the next level, and never could do it 100%. And it wasn't until I came over to America that I really got a chance to reset. And again, I kind of had to build it from ground up, and I decided sports cars is where I wanted to be, because I could see people getting paid to do that. So, and I did that, you know, through showroom stock cars up into GT cars, into prototypes, and been very thankful that I've had a career of it.
It seems how your career's gone, it's been planned out from the very beginning. And that's probably not true, you know, because obviously we met when you first came to America and you were driving in the Skip Barber series. Yeah. And we started just doing the road tours, you know, sharing rooms and causing havoc and all that kind of good stuff. One story I love to hear is the debut at Daytona. Daytona basically has been all throughout that sports car career, but that debut to get your butt in a seat at Daytona is a good story. You want to kind of tell a quick version of that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So that was with the GT1 car. Yeah. Yeah. So I was living in Florida at the time, and there was a friend of a friend who was a bank manager, a guy called Dave Rankin, and a GT1 car was Trans Am car back in the day. You're allowed to run it 24 hours at Daytona, and he had 4 guys together, and they all put their money in and to do the race. But back in those days, you had to qualify, and 20 cars went home. Right. And for whatever reason, they built the car up, they put all the best parts on it, but they went out and they were miles off the field. Like they couldn't, you know, they were like 3 seconds off of qualifying. And of course, they've already spent half the money getting the car together to get there. So it was kind of a desperate situation. And somebody said to Dave, you know, you should put Ian in, he'll get it in the field. And I'd never even driven anything like this in my life before. And I went out, and the first time I went out was in qualifying. And I didn't ever rate it.
Did you lie to him and tell him you'd done tons of laps around?
I don't really know how. I probably did, but I don't want to go on tape as saying that. But Anyway, so we went out and he said, it's got a lot of horsepower, but it doesn't handle great, and he was not telling a lie. I remember the Cadillacs at the time were in the LMP3 field, and this thing would pull the Cadillacs down the pit straight, no problem. But it took everything in my power just to not crash on the straight, because the thing was all weaving all over the place. Anyway, so it turned out we were on pole for most of the session, and we qualified second and like 36th overall, and we got it in the race. And then after, they found out that they got the wishbones on the wrong way around, so it had like 15 mil of toe out every time the thing squatted when you changed gear. That's why it was such a handful. But back then I was young and stupid, and I was just determined to get this thing in. But I had no idea even what lap times we were doing, so I was elated to see that we made the field. So, yeah.
So that kind of leads me into one of the big things that I think is a major asset to you, which is relationships, and how to manage relationships and building up relationships with all kinds of people and putting these people together. And, as we see, as you've evolved into driver management, did that just kind of come off the cuff, or was that something that you always had the ability to?
I don't think it was I don't think it's something that I actively pursued to get better at or try and master, but I've always been quite a good people person, and I try and stay pretty level-headed, even if through ups and downs, and I've been very lucky that people have helped me along the way, and it's nice after being in this paddock and in the racing scene for so long. There's certain people I can call or whatever, or vendors or whatever, and they'll just send stuff. They won't even worry. They'll know they get paid for it. Right. Manufacturers or whatever, they know if I come to them with a program, they know it's legit. I'm not just wasting their time. So it's motorsport is a huge relationship business. And it definitely has its ups and downs, and sometimes you feel wronged and you want to tell somebody how wronged you feel, but I've just found it never achieves anything, so I just try and just move on to the next and keep those relationships going, and a lot of the time they come back around,
Right, for sure.
Yeah,
you can burn bridges, and a lot of people do in racing. They don't see it coming,
And sometimes until you see the real big picture, it's hard to know why people do things for certain reasons, but then when you see it, especially like from a team principal side, you see why decisions are made, and now you understand why things happened in a certain way and all that. So I've been very fortunate, and for sure a lot of people have helped me, and I couldn't have done what I've done without them.
Right. So let's move on to the driver management side of things, which maybe some people don't understand or know that you do, because obviously, as I said, you got fingers in a lot of pies, but that seems to be one that's really kind of evolving into even the team that we're in, right? So how did that begin, where it was like, I'm Ian James, the race car driver just trying to find a ride, to I'm Ian James, I've got a lot of experience, I can help that guy, and I can kind of build a whole kind of business and help drivers that maybe couldn't get certain places without the people that you've connected with over the years?
Yeah, I think, as a driver, you figure out and doing contracts and stuff like that. And when I was at university, I studied a little bit of, business law and all that. So I had, a little bit of a background and like a base setting in that. But not all drivers are equipped with, it's very hard to talk about yourself in a positive fashion, for a lot of people,
right,
and to sell yourself, So, when I started to try and help a couple of drivers, I saw they were struggling to get their message across. Although they were phenomenal behind the wheel, they struggled to sell themselves and get deals which they really deserved, So, initially, I was just helping people a little bit and putting deals together, because it's very easy to get in the wrong deal or get taken advantage of, especially new people coming to the sport and all that. And it kind of just I won't say snowballed, but demand increased of like what I could do for people and get them in the right place, and I enjoy that. It can be stressful because everybody that I manage or look after, they're my friends as well, and that's the key thing, and I want them to succeed. So. But it's also rewarding when they do well,
Yeah, and sometimes you're actually racing against them, which is an interesting one. Things like with Mario.
Yeah, it's sometimes when, my team or me personally could be on the track with them, and it's just like, but we leave all that behind, and then, we stay friends regardless. So that's the main thing.
Yeah.
Hold. Go, 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 go.
Let's look back a little bit again on, I talked about like pivotal parts of your life. So what do you think, driving wise, we'll move on to the principal stuff in a second, but driving wise, what are the highlights for you? And it doesn't have to be championships, doesn't have to be race wins throughout your career.
Yeah, no, I mean, going to Le Mans was always a massive thing when I was growing up. So to go there was super rewarding. When I first came to America, I used to walk down the paddock and I used to see the teams like Alex Job and PTG that were the king of the roost at that point. Mm-hmm. And like just to be able to stick my head in the awning and look at the cars was amazing. So then years later to be actually to drive for those teams, I mean that was really rewarding, internally.
Yeah.
And to win races for them. I mean, I'm proud that to have won at every level in IMSA and Grand Am and SRO. I mean it's just I can't. Sometimes I pinch myself because when you're in it, you forget how lucky you are to be in it.
Yeah.
But when you look back on it, you're like, oh my God, I got to do all these races. I drove these brilliant cars and teams and got paid a few pennies for it.
Yeah. I'll never forget the battle you had with Montoya. That's one of my highlights of watching you because I was helping you as a spotter at that time. That must have been pretty special, that moment, just mano a mano against Montoya at his height.
Yeah.
DP cars, that was...
Yeah, I mean, things like that, obviously those guys are on a different level, but, in the same car, in certain scenarios, I think, like Montoya was in front of me and Franchitti was behind me. I mean, those two great amazing stars, and it was like that for hours and hours, and it was just like, oh my God, I'm doing this,
It's pretty fun. The reality doesn't strike you until afterwards, maybe, because you're just racing someone then.
Exactly,
Yeah, pretty highlights. So let's go into where we are now. Well, we have to look a bit further back. Just basically the history of the Heart of Racing, because this is Heart of Racing 2, technically.
Yep.
How did that evolve? Obviously, Gabe has done an amazing job in helping this whole thing come about and keep it going, and an inspiration to the whole team and everything. How did that relationship work, and how did it evolve to where, I guess we end up where we are now?
Yeah, so I mean, this is it's Gabe's vision here, and it's his. Without him, none of this would happen. I met Gabe in 2013. I'd done some stuff with Team Seattle at that point with Don Kitch, and I met Gabe with Don in Laguna Seca at the end of 2013. He was interested about doing a program at Daytona the next year, so I flew to Seattle. And we sat down and talked about it as a Team Seattle program. That morphed into a full season, and I kind of found Alex Job or got with Alex Job to run the program. That wasn't the original intent. And then the Heart of Racing came about because Team Seattle was very Seattle orientated, whereas we do a lot of work and help for hospitals all around the world. We wanted it to be a bit more of a wider outreach. Mm-hmm. So Gabe came up with Heart of Racing, and then that was born as the branding. It was an Alex Job program, but sponsored by Heart of Racing. Yeah. And then we raced in 14, 15, and 16 with that program with Alex with the Porsche, and then although we stopped doing the IMSA program, stayed in contact with Gabe, and we did some one-off races in Europe and in America. And then at the end of 19, he came to me, or I was in Seattle, and he suggested, maybe it's time to go racing again. What do you think? And of course I'm like, yes. And that's when he said, what's the options? How are we going to run this thing? And I gave him some different options and cars and stuff like that. And he goes, well, what about the team? And I said, well, I think I could probably, run my own team, set up a team and have it Heart of Racing, And he very quickly came back and said, yep, that's what I was thinking as well. And here we are today, So I think that was 6 or 7 weeks before the start of the 2020 season. And Gabe's a decisive guy when he says, let's push the button, let's go, and that's what we did.
And I love being with the team. It's full of such unique personalities. Did you know exactly who you wanted when he said, let's put a team together? Do you have an idea? Because, on paper, the team isn't like a bunch of Formula One engineers and mechanics, and we're just going to put them together and give them a shirt.
Right.
It's a very different team. And, there's old guys with experience, and there's guys who've never been in a race team before, all kind of coming together. And, it says something about you with how the team get along and are all one vision, and there's no egos, and not everyone's just, this is just my job for this weekend, and I'll be at this team, next team. Can you kind of think about, how you pick these people to be in the team?
Yeah, so, most of the people everybody I know somebody very close to them that would recommend them. Yeah. But there's two things I always, like, my number one thing is this somebody I would like to go and have dinner with? Is there a connection where, I'd like them as a friend as well as somebody that works on the team? And B, can they have fun doing it? Because, if we don't have fun doing it, then the program doesn't keep going along, And also how they're going to mesh together. It's very rare that there's no egos in our team, and there's no place for it, because we don't need superstars, although we've got some secret superstars. Everybody just has to work to one cause, and then we'll be successful. Mm-hmm. And obviously, hopefully we'll continue to be successful and get better and better. But it's so rewarding when you see everybody mesh together, because when you think, we're going to go racing at Daytona in 8 weeks, the initial thought for some people is like, well, there's no chance. Yeah. And then when we went to 2 cars, people thought, 2 cars, there's no chance they'll get that competitive, and we did that, So I'm a people person. I have to have a connection with the person that, to be on the team, and people's strengths aren't always obvious, and people haven't always been given the chance to excel in their positions, and that's what I try and provide.
Yeah. But obviously you still have to hold that line of being a principal, which I think you balance. You can't be everyone's best buddy.
No.
To a degree, right? So some hard decisions have to be made sometimes. Yeah,
sometimes you have to, say it out as it is, but most of the time people much prefer to be just told how it is than, how it goes on in other places, and there's an undercurrent of unhappiness or whatever. Mm-hmm. If you're unhappy, I totally get it. If you don't want to be here, you shouldn't be here. Yeah. But so far, I don't think anybody has come up with that.
No one's left yet.
No one's left yet.
So what's the goals and aspirations for Ian James, and also for the Heart of Racing? Because obviously, as I said, you do have other things going on at the same time. Yeah,
so Ian James is probably, towards the end of his driving career, in the last few throws of that. Except, I'll be turning bronze here soon, so maybe that'll be another lease of life I'll have. But I still enjoy driving. I'm still reasonably competitive, as a third driver. I think I still give some, good input in the car and the direction. So as long as that continues, I like to still have a bit of involvement. I'm really enjoying doing the GT4 program with Gray, and that's been very successful this year. So that'll continue. And then I just want to keep building the infrastructure around the Heart of Racing and the stuff we do away from the track, the engineering side. We're getting stronger and stronger on the engineering and design side. We're building another project from ground up, which has been really rewarding, just seeing that design phase. We're building our knowledge and know-how and equipment and technology. So right now we're on an upward path, so I see more races, more cars, less sleep.
Who needs sleep?
Sleep's overrated.
Yeah. So you talked about the backside of your driving career. How is that comparing now? Because sometimes, obviously, when there's just a 2-driver race, you're on the pit wall. Yeah. Is that as rewarding as being in the driver's seat, or is it just something different? It's
a different kind of feeling, When you drive, you get that, there's this kind of a euphoria about driving and doing a good job. But it's also really rewarding when people that you put in a position do really well. Whether it be like, I'm super proud when we knock out a fast pit stop and beat people out of the pits. That gives me a rush of adrenaline, you know, when the drivers that we choose to put in the cars, you know, perform really well, that's I'm really proud of that, you know. So it's definitely a different type of feeling, but it's rewarding in that it's something that we've built and we can see the, you know, the fruits of the benefit out of it. So it's just like, you know, in any business there's this win, you know, you win in a deal, you win in a transaction, you win in a production or whatever, but in racing you get to mesh that with the competition aspect of it. Right. So for me, being around motorsport is just it's a privilege, and to be able to earn a living in the paddock still is, I'm just very lucky.
Plus 1.5 seconds to P2, still within range, doing great.
Favorite car, favorite track?
You know, this is maybe a weird one. So my favorite car I drove would probably be the E46, you know, GTR BMW. I thought that car was just awesome. And track, I've always had an affinity for Sebring. I mean, I've just, you know, it's probably not the most refined track, but I always just love going to that place and seem to do reasonably well.
Yeah, we can head in there next week.
Next week, yeah.
So there you go, and again and again. All right, thanks Ian, thanks for your time. I know we've got work to do, qualifying's coming up, we've got to go win a race.
Let's roll.
All right, so that's it from us. Parc Fermé, hopefully you enjoyed all this, and we'll be back again with another one sometime soon. Cheers.
Thank you very much, guys.